Please, do not scroll past these words. I know life is busy. I know you have hundreds of things to worry about. But what I am about to share could change your family, your life, and your soul forever. Ask yourself, do your children or grandchildren spend hours glued to their screens, endlessly scrolling through TikTok, playing games, or watching videos without being able to stop? Have you tried to limit their screen time, only for them to get frustrated, argue, or ignore you? Do you feel like the younger generation is becoming more distant, losing focus, and disappearing into a virtual world you can't reach? If the answer is yes, please listen to me. I was just like them. I was trapped in my screen, thinking it was just harmless entertainment. But then, one night, I had a near-death experience. And in that moment, I saw the truth. I met Jesus. He opened my eyes and showed me something terrifying. Technology is no longer just a tool, it has become a prison. An invisible chain is binding the minds, hearts, and souls of my generation. Before that fateful night, I didn't believe in any of this. I thought it was all exaggerated. But after what I saw, I can no longer stay silent. I must warn you. I have come to this platform to speak out. To tell you, parents, grandparents, brothers, and sisters, that the enemy is stealing our children right in front of our eyes. Please, do not ignore this message. Hear what I have to say before it is too late. It was a Friday night like any other. After a long and exhausting week at school, I came home, tossed my backpack into the usual corner, and let out a sigh of relief. The weekend had finally arrived. Dinner passed uneventfully. My parents chatted about their day. My siblings were distracted by their own interests. And I ate while half-heartedly listening. Afterward, my parents settled on the couch to watch TV for a little while before heading to bed. And my siblings retreated to their rooms. Soon, the house grew quiet. As for me, I just wanted to unwind before going to sleep. I grabbed a bag of snacks, picked up my phone, and sank into the couch. I wasn't one of those people obsessed with TikTok. But I had my own weakness, anime. Japanese animated shows had always fascinated me. The bright colors, the gripping storylines, the unique characters. I could lose myself in their world for hours. And that's exactly what happened. I told myself I would only watch one episode, just to relax a little. But then one turned into two. Two turned into three. And before I knew it, I had lost count. Just one more. I kept telling myself, convincing myself that stopping now would be a waste. The episodes were so short anyway. Just 20 minutes each, surely. I could spare another 20 minutes. Right? Time kept slipping away, but I barely noticed. My fingers absent-mindedly reached for more snacks. My eyes never strayed from the glowing screen. I was fully immersed, unaware of how the night was passing me by. Outside, the world had gone still. The television downstairs had been turned off long ago. The occasional shuffling of my parents moving in their bedroom had faded into silence. No more murmured voices from my siblings' rooms. The entire house seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber. It was just me, alone in the dark, with nothing but the dim glow of my phone screen illuminating my face. I didn't feel lonely, at least, not consciously. But looking back, I realize now that there was a sense of isolation creeping in. A strange emptiness that I was too distracted to notice. The artificial world on my screen felt more alive than the real world around me. Then, it happened. A sudden wave of dizziness hit me out of nowhere. My head felt light, my vision blurred, and for a brief moment, it was as if the entire room was spinning. I blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the sensation. The screen in front of me seemed to distort, the colors twisting and warping unnaturally. A strange pressure built up in my chest, making it difficult to breathe. Maybe I've been staring at the screen for too long, I thought, trying to rationalize what was happening. Or maybe I just need some water. Yeah, that's all. I just need to stand up, walk to the kitchen, and I'll feel fine. I tried to move, but before I could even lift myself off the couch, a heavy darkness washed over me. Everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was no longer in my living room. The warmth of the couch, the faint glow of the television downstairs, the quiet hum of the night, everything was gone. Instead, I was weightless, suspended in midair, yet strangely unafraid of falling. There was no wind, no sensation of movement, yet I was floating. My heart pounded as I looked down and saw something that made my breath catch in my throat, my own body. I was still there, lying motionless on the couch, my phone clutched in my limp hand, its screen still glowing, oblivious to the fact that I was no longer inside. A cold chill ran through me. Am I dead? The thought hit me like a crashing wave. My chest tightened, panic clawed at my mind. I tried to move, but my limbs refused to respond. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. It was as if I had no voice, no control. I was trapped, caught between something known and something I could not understand. I wanted to breathe, but I had no lungs. I wanted to wake up, but I wasn't asleep. Then, before I could comprehend what was happening, something changed. A light, brighter than anything I had ever seen, burst into the room, cutting through the darkness like a sword. It wasn't just illumination, it was something alive. Something with power. Something that carried a presence so overwhelming that everything else paled in comparison. It didn't flicker like a flame, nor did it blind like the harsh glow of the sun. Instead, it was pure, steady, commanding. The moment it appeared, I realized just how thick the darkness around me had been. How suffocating and heavy it truly was. But against this light, the darkness had no choice but to retreat. I turned toward the source, and that's when I saw him. Jesus. He wasn't like the paintings I had seen in churches. He wasn't like the figure in children's Bible stories. He was greater, more radiant, more powerful than words could ever capture. His presence wasn't just something to be seen, it was something to be felt. Something that wrapped around me like a force beyond nature itself. His very being radiated love. Not the soft, sentimental love people speak of, but a love so vast and consuming that it made my soul tremble. And at the same time, he emanated authority, the kind that made me instinctively aware that he was above all things, beyond all things, greater than all things. He wasn't just someone standing there, he was everything. My whole being wanted to fall to my knees, to bow, to worship, but I couldn't move, not out of fear, but because I was overwhelmed. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing, what I was feeling. Every part of me knew this was real. This wasn't a dream, wasn't a hallucination, wasn't my imagination running wild. This was truth. This was reality beyond the reality I had always known. "Come," he said, his voice both gentle and firm, filled with a depth that carried eternal weight. It wasn't just an invitation. It wasn't just a command. It was a calling, a truth that resonated deep within me, awakening something that had been asleep for too long. He extended his hand toward me. Without hesitation, without question, I reached out. The moment my fingers touched his, something surged through me, a warmth, a power, a presence so strong that for the first time in my existence, I felt whole. And then, in an instant, the living room disappeared. The couch, the walls, my lifeless body, all of it vanished like a wisp of smoke. I was no longer in my home, no longer bound to the world I had always known. Instead, I found myself standing in a place unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't Earth, yet it wasn't heaven. It wasn't bound by time, yet I was fully aware. It was vast, endless, and yet intimate. The very air felt different, thicker, fuller, charged with something greater than life itself. And as I stood there, holding the hand of Jesus, one thing became undeniably clear. My life would never be the same again. All around me, thousands upon thousands of glowing screens hovered in midair, stretching endlessly in every direction. Smartphones, tablets, televisions, computer monitors, virtual reality headsets, each one flickering with light, casting an eerie glow into the vast, empty space around me. At first glance, they looked like ordinary devices, the kind we used every day. But something was wrong. There was a darkness lurking beneath their glow. Something I couldn't quite explain but could feel, a presence that was alive. But not in a way that brought comfort. It was oppressive, heavy, sinister. I stepped forward cautiously, my eyes darting between the screens. That's when I saw them, faces. Millions of them, reflected in the endless sea of glowing glass. These weren't just people watching content. They were trapped. Their expressions were vacant, their eyes hollow and lifeless, as if their very souls had been drained away. There was no emotion, no thought, no awareness, just blank, hypnotized stares. Some of them seemed frozen, caught in an endless loop of scrolling, watching, consuming, while others twitched ever so slightly, as if struggling to break free but unable to resist. A sickening realization settled in my chest. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pulsing hum of the screens. Jesus stood beside me, his presence unwavering, his expression filled with sorrow. He didn't look away from the sea of screens, but I could feel the weight of his sadness, as if he carried the pain of every soul that had been ensnared. Slowly, he extended his hand toward the endless expanse before us. "This is the battlefield," he said, his voice steady but heavy with grief. "The enemy has turned technology into his greatest weapon to destroy your generation." His words struck me like a thunderclap. I had always thought of technology as something neutral, something that could be here. Seeing it from this perspective, I realized how wrong I had been. This wasn't just about social media, video games, or entertainment. War not fought with guns or bombs, but with distractions, temptations, and invisible chains that wrapped around people without them ever realizing it. I looked closer at the faces on the screens. The more I focused, the more details I could see. Some were young, barely teenagers, their fingers mindlessly swiping through endless feeds of content. Others were adults, their eyes glazed over as they scrolled through news articles. Online shopping, meaningless distractions that kept them disconnected from reality. Tablets as they stared blankly at animated characters dancing across the screen. The chains that bound them weren't made of metal, but of something far worse, deception. Each chain had a word etched into it: comparison, anxiety, lust, distraction, pride, envy. The words burned themselves into my mind. They don't even know they're chained. I murmured, my throat tightening. That is the enemy's greatest trick. Jesus replied, his voice filled with sorrow. To enslave them without their knowledge. To make them believe they are free while binding them in chains they cannot see. I swallowed hard, my hands clenching into fists. How many times had I lost hours staring at my own screen? Oblivious to everything around me? How many times had I compared myself to the unrealistic images online? Feeling inadequate without realizing I was being manipulated? How many times had I justified wasting time, telling myself it was just entertainment, just a way to relax, never considering that I was slowly being pulled deeper into something beyond my control? A deep unease settled in my chest. I turned back to Jesus, my voice barely above a whisper. What can we do? He looked at me with unwavering seriousness. Wake them up. From the glowing screens, something began to change. What once seemed like harmless devices, mere tools of entertainment, revealed their true nature. From each screen, invisible chains slithered outward like living serpents, stretching and twisting through the air. They moved with eerie precision, searching, latching onto people without resistance. One by one, the chains coiled around wrists, wrapped around necks, and bound themselves tightly to hearts. The grip was unbreakable, suffocating, yet no one struggled. No one even noticed. Their eyes remained fixed on the screens, their bodies motionless, their souls unaware of what was happening to them. I watched in growing horror. These weren't just chains. They were something far worse, bonds that connected directly to the soul. Draining life, enslaving without force. Each chain had something inscribed on it. Words glowing faintly in the dim light: comparison, anxiety, lust, distraction, pride, envy, greed, hopelessness. Each person bore their own set of chains, uniquely tailored to their weaknesses. Yet none of them could see it. None of them felt it. They had become so accustomed to their captivity that they no longer recognized it as bondage. Then, everything shifted. The screens flickered once, twice, then pulsed with a deep, ominous red. The usual scrolling images, the videos, the endless cycle of content, gone. In their place, a single symbol appeared, glowing with an unnatural intensity. It burned with a fire that wasn't warm but suffocating, oppressive, consuming. At first, it was just on the screens. But then, I saw something that made my breath catch in my throat. The symbol wasn't staying on the devices. It was spreading. One by one, the people standing before the screens began to change. The symbol appeared again, not on their phones, not on their computers, but on them. It burned itself into their foreheads. It etched itself onto their hands. Not with ink, not with paint, but as though it had been branded into their flesh, sinking into their very being. A mark of ownership. A seal that claimed them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But my body refused to move. What horrified me most wasn't the mark itself, it was how they received it. No one was fighting it. No one was resisting. They didn't recoil in pain. Didn't question it. Didn't flinch. They simply stood there, eyes empty, allowing it to happen as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Some of them even stretched out their hands willingly, as though they wanted to be marked. I turned to Jesus, my heart racing, my voice barely above a whisper. "What is this? What's happening?" He looked at me, his expression filled with sorrow, his gaze steady. "This is not yet the mark of the beast," he said, his voice firm, unshaken. "But the enemy is training them to accept it." His words sent a wave of realization crashing over me. The mark of the beast wouldn't come suddenly, wouldn't appear as an instant demand. The world was being prepared for it, conditioned to welcome it, shaped to see it as something natural, something inevitable. It wouldn't need to be forced upon people. By the time it arrived, they would want it. They would embrace it as if it were a gift, unaware of the eternal cost they were paying. I felt a lump rise in my throat. The enemy wasn't coming with chains and shackles made of iron. He didn't need to. He was weaving a web of convenience, entertainment, validation, and instant gratification, a net so alluring that people walked straight into it without question. They weren't being dragged into captivity. They were stepping into it voluntarily. I wanted to look away, to pretend this wasn't happening, to tell myself this was just a nightmare I would wake up from. But deep down, I knew the truth. This was real, and time was running out. Jesus turned to me, his gaze piercing through every doubt, every fear, every hesitation within me. His presence radiated power, undeniable, unshakable, absolute. And yet, in the same moment, there was such tenderness, such love, such an overwhelming sense of sorrow in his eyes. It was as if he could see the weight of everything I was feeling. The fear pressing down on my chest. The uncertainty of what would come next. Slowly, he placed his hand on my shoulder. The moment he did, a warmth unlike anything I had ever felt surged through my being. It wasn't just physical warmth, it was something deeper. Something that reached into the very core of my soul. It was strength, clarity, purpose, a certainty that I was no longer just me. I had been called for something far greater than myself. "You are my messenger," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "I have chosen you to warn them. Not just your generation, but all generations." His words settled over me like a wave, powerful and unrelenting. Tears welled up in my eyes before I could even process what he had said. Me? How could I possibly do something like this? Who would listen? Who would believe me? But they won't listen to me. I choked out, my voice barely above a whisper, thick with emotion. "They'll think I'm crazy. They'll mock me, reject me, ignore me." I thought of my friends, my family, my teachers, the countless people who would shake their heads, roll their eyes, dismiss my words as nothing more than imagination or hysteria. I imagined their laughter, their skepticism, their whispers behind my back. My heart clenched at the thought. Jesus didn't look away. His eyes never left mine. He wasn't angry. He wasn't disappointed. He understood. They rejected me too. He said gently, yet his words carried a weight that sent shivers through me. But some will hear, some will listen, and their eyes will be opened. The way he said it, so certain, so unwavering, made something stir deep within me. It wasn't about how many people would reject the message. It wasn't about whether I would be laughed at or scorned. It wasn't even about my own fear. It was about the ones who would listen. I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. How could I let my fear stop me when I had seen what I had seen? How could I keep silent when I now knew the truth? If I stayed quiet, if I refused, I would be no better than those who chose ignorance. Those who willingly walked toward their destruction without ever questioning it. Speak the truth, Jesus continued. Warn them that time is running out. His voice resonated in my soul, searing into my spirit like fire. There was no room for excuses, no time for hesitation, no space for doubt. This was bigger than me, bigger than my fears, bigger than the rejection I would face. This was about souls. I wiped the tears from my face. Though my hands were still trembling, my heart was racing, but at the same time, something inside me had settled, an unshakable resolve. This mission was mine. It had been given to me by him. I looked up at Jesus, my voice still weak but steadier than before. I whispered, I will warn them, because if even one person listened, if even one soul was saved, if even one life was pulled from the chains of deception, then everything would be worth it. Jesus nodded, a look of quiet approval on his face. But there was also urgency. The time is short, he reminded me. The world is growing darker. The enemy is working harder than ever. But I have given you the truth. And the truth is light, light that no darkness can overcome. I felt the weight of his words settle into my spirit. This wasn't just a task. It was a battle, a fight for the hearts and minds of people who didn't even realize they were being led astray. And now, I was being sent into that battle, not with weapons, not with power of my own, but with truth. I wanted to ask so many things. How will I do this? Where should I go? What should I say? But before the questions could escape my lips, I already knew the answer. Trust me, that was all he had ever asked. I took a deep breath and clenched my fists. Determination hardening within me. I will not be silent. Go, Jesus said, his voice like thunder and yet as gentle as a whisper. Tell them before it is too late. And in an instant, everything around me faded into brilliant, blinding light. Parents, grandparents, elders, listen to this warning. This is not just about technology, not just about social media, not just about screens. This is about the souls of your children and grandchildren. The enemy is fighting for them, and most do not even realize they are in a battle. He does not need to come with chains and force. He does not need to frighten them into submission. He only needs to distract them, entertain them, and numb them, until they no longer care about God, no longer hear his voice, no longer seek the truth. He steals their time, their focus, their purpose, slowly, silently, without them even noticing. He replaces prayer with endless scrolling. He replaces faith with comparison. He replaces truth with deception, until they no longer know who they are or why they were created. He makes them feel alone even when they are surrounded by people. He fills their minds with anxiety, depression, and hopelessness, telling them they are not enough, that they will never measure up, that no one truly cares. But it is not too late. You are not powerless. Pray for them. Fight for them. Stand in the gap for them. The enemy wants you to be passive, to assume that this is just the way the world is now, that you cannot change it. But that is a lie. You have a role to play. Teach them the truth. Show them what it means to put God first. Set an example by stepping away from distractions yourself and making Christ the center of your home. If they do not see you living out your faith, how can they believe it is real? If they see you consumed by the same distractions, how will they understand the urgency? To my generation, wake up before it's too late. The enemy is not just attacking your mind. He is after your soul. Every moment spent mindlessly scrolling. Every time you say, just one more video. Every night you stay up lost in a world of entertainment while your Bible gathers dust. This is exactly what he wants. He does not need to tempt you with evil if he can simply keep you distracted from God. Do you think you are in control? Do you think this is just entertainment? Do you think the hours spent online, the time wasted comparing yourself to others, the slow drift away from prayer and truth is an accident? It's not. It is a carefully designed strategy to keep you from seeking what truly matters. Ask yourself, how often do you feel empty after spending hours online? How often do you compare your life to the curated, filtered images of others and feel like you will never measure up? How often do you feel like you don't have time to pray, to read the Bible, to truly seek God, yet time disappears when you're on your phone? Do you feel closer to God now than you did a year ago? Or has your faith slowly faded into the background, pushed aside for later, while the enemy steals more and more of your heart? The mark of the beast is not here yet, but the world is being prepared for it. The chains are already forming. People are being trained to accept whatever is given to them, to value convenience and entertainment over truth, to give up control of their own minds and hearts without a second thought. If you cannot put down your phone now, if you cannot say no to distractions now, if you cannot choose God over the world now, what makes you think you will be able to resist when the real test comes? But there is hope. You can break free. You can open your eyes and see the chains before they become permanent. You can turn off the screen, fall to your knees, and call on the name of Jesus. And when you do, the enemy loses. When you hunger for God more than the world, the chains will break. When you seek truth over entertainment, your spirit will awaken. When you put God first, everything changes. But the choice is yours. No one will force you. No one will drag you away from the distractions. The enemy is counting on you being too comfortable, too entertained, too indifferent to do anything. Do not wait until it is too late. Do not ignore the warning. Jesus is calling. Will you answer? Or will you keep scrolling? The time is short. The warning has been given. The choice is yours. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these powerful stories and creating a space for open, heartfelt conversations. Click the notification bell so you're always updated when we post new content. Together, let's explore the unseen, celebrate the miraculous, and inspire one another to live with love, faith, and wonder.